Oh my, Final Fantasy XII Revenant Wings. In many ways, this is kind of like an apology for all of the people that Final Fantasy XII didn't like. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is Video Game Growing Pains, and we're here to talk about the Nintendo DS only sequel to Final Fantasy XII. I know, right? They made a game for the PlayStation 2, and they decided to make a sequel for the Nintendo DS. The hell? Still, I actually quite like this game. It's in many ways a return to form, but it's still very different from your typical Final Fantasies. First off, the story is pretty simple compared to what we got in Final Fantasy XII. Final Fantasy XII Revenant Wings finds Vaughn and Pinello looking for Balthier and Fran, who've disappeared since the end of Final Fantasy XII. They've got their own airship and they're ready to become sky pirates, because honestly, who wouldn't want to be sky pirates? It's awesome. But they kind of get into some trouble chasing after Balthier and Fran and get stuck on the sky continent of Lemures. Why must they all be so hard to pronounce? Alongside some of their former rivals from the original game and some characters that they know, and some new characters, they come across a group of winged people who are being attacked on that continent by strange invaders and who are being assaulted by monsters. And so, being the good-hearted heroes that they are, Fran and Pinello decide to help them. It's not just entirely out of the goodness of their heart. Their airship is wrecked, they're stuck there, and the wing people have decided that they can actually help out Vaughn and Pinello while they look for Balthier and Fran. The story is pretty simple. We do get to learn some very interesting things. For example, the monsters start invading the world below Lemures, and we learn a little bit more about the history of the Okuria. Being the sort of jerky, godlike beings they were, they actually banished the winged people to the skies, and their former leader had actually to make a great sacrifice in order to keep them from, well, dying out. So he became something akin to their god, and is using their souls and their powers to fuel his source. So you've got to cut off his power supply and eventually defeat the god. It's actually a pretty nice story with callbacks to the original game, and it makes some nice cameos as well. Overall, though, everything about the game, in my opinion, is much better than Final Fantasy XII. Bear in mind, this is my personal opinion, not just because I think that 12 is not that great. Story aside. Anyway, so musically, we've got Nono Uematsu. So the musical score is not as powerful as it could have been. But Hitoshi Sakamoto does a good job. While the music isn't as memorable as Final Fantasy Tactics or Final Fantasy 12 previously, all of the music in the game, I think, is quite fitting, and it's very suitable for the themes. It makes you feel good listening to it. It makes you feel good playing it. The battle theme gets you pumped. The overworld theme makes you feel very sort of down to earth and calm. It's a very nice musical score. Graphically, we go back to using a lot of sprites, and I think this is really probably great. I would like to see more games like this. The sprites are very colorful. They're not as evocative as, say, Final Fantasy VI, but they've still got a lot going for them. And when we're talking, we use pretty nicely painted character portraits. Overall, graphics are quite beautiful, and we have a lot to see. The sky continent of Lemures is a beautiful place, and you go from area to area trying to accomplish different objectives. Here's the kicker, though. This is neither an MMORPG, an MMORPG that's not online, or your standard JRPG. This is a tactical RPG. I know, right? What were they thinking? But it's actually really cool. You take those monsters that you're familiar with from your standard Final Fantasies, your Lamias, your Ochus, your Aramans, your Goblins, and now you can summon them as soldiers and control them using the Nintendo DS stylus and have them fight for you. You do have a little bit of resource management here and there where you're trying to make sure you don't overextend yourself and let your territories be captured, and it does require a bit of quick thinking and thought. The best part about the game, though, of course, are that they bring back the original summons. Bahamut, Ifrit, Shiva, all of the ones that we were missing from Final Fantasy XII come back, with a few extras. Gilgamesh comes back, too. I love the fan service here. The fan service for all of the old monsters is great, but you still get a lot of variety with the new monsters, the settings, and all that you can summon. The game is brutally hard, I'm going to say that up front, but it is still easy enough to play through and very enjoyable, I think. The combat focuses on different mission objectives, though it usually comes down to kill your enemies and capture spaces. A lot of the time you will have to actually protect people, or gather resources. Resources are important because you can actually change your character's stats and make better things with them. So it's pretty cool, all the different things you can do. Overall, I think the game is a lot of fun. Originally was not planned to be released as a Final Fantasy XII related game, but they thought, screw it, why not? People didn't like 12, so maybe they'll enjoy the story, but with a different setting. And you know what? We kind of did. I really like Final Fantasy Revenant Wings. Not enough to probably play again, although talking about it does make me want to play one more time. But I think that it's less cryptic than Final Fantasy XII, and while the story may not be as deep, it's still pretty good, and I think the gameplay is a lot more satisfying than 12 was. On a personal note, I like the graphics more than 12. I think the sprites are the best way Final Fantasy looks, but I understand if people don't like them. That's okay too. Is it worth tracking down? Well, if you like Final Fantasy 12, yes. If you like tactical RPGs in a real-time strategy, tactical real-time strategy RPGs, yes. If you like pretty DS games and you're missing some of the old Final Fantasy flavor, yes. But be aware that the game takes a while to grow on you, and it may not be your thing. It is still, I think, a great effort, and it sort of is a nice segue for us to be talking about next. The spin off series to Final Fantasy, most notably the GBA games. Next time, we're going to be moving from Final Fantasy Revenant Wings to talk about the GBA games. We'll be talking about Final Fantasy Tactics Advance and Tactics Advance 2 Grimoire of the Rift. Now, Final Fantasy XII Revenant Wings is a game lacking the production values of 12, but I think it's got a lot of heart to it as well. It's a very graphically pleasing game. It controls really well and is one of the few Final Fantasy games to use the stylus controls of the DS to excessively good degree. And overall, I think it's a fun experience. I don't know if it's worth tracking down for a huge amount of money, but if you can find it on cheap, I'd say pick it up. It's a lot of fun. Next time, we're going to be moving to talk about the sidequels, spin-offs, and different series. We'll start with Final Fantasy Tactics since we're already in Ivalice. So, Tactics Advance A2, and then we move on to the GameCube titles. Oh God, help us all. Alright, this is Video Game Growing Pains, signing out.